a petrol bomb was probably thrown through a window of a bank just in one of the main streets here in the commercial quarter, and it just caught fire. And the fire brigade is saying that they went in and they found the bodies of 3 people. But I was talking to a colleague of mine in another end of town, and she said there was this explosion, and a department of the finance ministry went up in smoke, and she said that it's gutted. And that is, as you were saying, is the tax offices here, and I mean that's really a very serious. It's all serious, but in terms of the kind of the immediate problems that Greece is facing, is that it's supposed to be collecting taxes, and you couldn't have a more direct target than that, aiming at the tax authorities. This is not, and what they're basically saying to the government is you're just not going to be able to collect the money, and we are going to do whatever is necessary. But I think that the people who probably carried this out were probably anarchists, but I can't say for that for certain because I didn't see them.
And in terms of the outlook, do we know much about the kind of strategy the police are likely to deploy as the afternoon goes on, or do you think we can expect this to really get worse through into the evening?
Well, this has got a really nasty feel about it, I have to say. And what struck me here is that the police, just directly in front of Parliament, were standing there protecting Parliament, while about 75 metres to their right there were some people just throwing stones through the windows of the ATE Bank, which is the agricultural bank here. And this really does go against the strategy that was promised by the new Citizens Protection Minister, Mr. Chrysohoidis, when the Socialists came into power after in October last year. There was absolutely no confidence in the police, and that was largely because during the riots of 2008, the police had stood back and they had allowed their people to vent their anger, and they had smashed up city centres. And Mr. Chrysohoidis, when he took on this difficult job, said that he would never allow that to happen. But it does seem as though perhaps the police, by taking this sort of slightly defensive posture, they may have allowed this to happen. They weren't, cracking down on these anarchists as hard as they should have done, perhaps. And now we have 3 people who are dead.
We've been speaking through the morning to various demonstrators and eyewitnesses and so on. It strikes me that the people that we haven't heard from are government spokespeople. We know that the government and parliamentarians are meeting inside the Parliament building, hence the focus there as they discuss this package of austerity measures. Has there been any message to protesters from, for example, the Prime Minister, George Papandreou?
We haven't heard anything from him yet, but I'm sure that they're absolutely horrified that it's gone this far, and I'm sure that the international community is shaken by the fact that there have been deaths there, because I think that they knew that the Greeks were going to be rebellious, but they didn't expect this to go as far. Perhaps what's going to happen now is that there will be some pause as people realise what a terrible tragedy this has been, and that human life is more important than finance, and it's more important than the money in your pocket. And I imagine that there's going to be a real state of shock in Greece that it's actually got this far. And I mean, the reason why the bank was targeted, obviously, is because these the people, are fed up with, capitalism. They're fed up with big business, and they believe that the rich and the powerful and the banks who've been, making money, they make money if the market's up, they make money if the market's down, and that's why the bank was targeted.
As parliamentarians meet discussing this package, they will no doubt be well aware of what's going on outside. I imagine they can hear it, but the suggestion is that the majority that Mr. Papandreou has will enable him to push this package through. When the country as a whole is faced with this financial crisis, clearly there is anger from protesters, but do they have an alternative? What do they actually want to see? If this huge black hole is to be filled, there is going to have to be pain, but they presumably have other suggestions as to how the situation should be rectified.
Well, I think that there are many people on the streets who would actually like to see Greece default, because they would like to see the banks lose money, because they don't want the ordinary people to lose money. And I think that the deaths of these people is really going to change the nature of the debate, and especially amongst the Socialist Party. Now, I'm sure that Mr. Papandreou is going to say to his party that they have to hold the line, and they have to vote this this new bill through, which will authorise these austerity measures, so that the money, the rescue package, can be released. But because this is a socialist government, it's going to stick in many people's throats, and the fact that people have now died over this is going to perhaps prick their consciences even more, and it's going to be interesting to see whether the socialists stick to the party line, stick to what the international community wants them to do, or whether they start to rebel.
Yes, you mentioned the international community there, and I was going to ask just how much pressure the Greek government will feel it's under now from people like Angela Merkel.
Well, I think that there'll be an awful lot of resentment towards Angela Merkel, to be honest, because she has prevaricated in this whole issue over whether or not to grant Greece assistance for quite some time because of her own domestic political reasons. And that's because of that regional election, which she's in danger of losing. But they are going to be under immense pressure, but I think that what the problem is going to be now is that because of this social unrest, which hasn't been seen in Greece, I don't think, for quite some time, the markets are going to look at that and say, well, it's going to be impossible for the government to enforce these austerity measures if there's going to be that sort of rebellion on the streets. And so the whole spectre of Greece defaulting is going to become much bigger. Although Mr. Papandreou says that he cannot countenance the idea of Greece becoming bankrupt because the country will become an even bigger financial pariah than it is now, and it'll take an age for the country to get back on its feet.
And just while we're talking about this, just recap for us, Malcolm, if you would, on what exactly the package of austerity cuts would involve and why that then is causing so much anger among those protesters and many, many ordinary Greeks.
Most of the cuts are being directed at the civil service because that's an area where the International Monetary Fund and the European auditors see that there's room for cuts, and so almost everybody in the civil service has had their salaries cut, and they're also having their pensions cut. Some people are having them capped completely, and it's. As far as tax rise is concerned, VAT has now shot up. That's really affecting small businesses. They're trying to absorb those tax rises out of solidarity almost with ordinary people because they realise that there's going to be less money flowing around. But the consequence of that, they fear, is that small businesses and shops are going to go under. And also, petrol, for example, has gone up, alcohol and cigarettes have gone up, but mainly, so everybody's living standards are declining because they've got less money in their pockets, their future's looking pretty bleak, and there are going to be many people who are going to say, well, this country's going to be on its uppers for the next 5 or 10 years, and what Greeks have always done in times of crisis is that they have emigrated, and so you're probably going to see a flight and emigration of the youngest and finest.
Malcolm, thank you very much indeed. That's Malcolm Brabant, our correspondent, who's looking very closely at that scene there in the Greek capital for us. We'll return to him shortly.